What's up, and welcome back, Ole Miss fans. This is the Rebel Talk. We're coming at you live here Tuesday night, 7:27 p.m. Some college basketball kind of overlapped into the college football playoff rankings, but here we go. We're about to dissect it and get into it. As we all know, Ole Miss lost to Florida. They were ranked the 9th seed, so you could expect them to drop quite a few spots here, probably looking somewhere in the 12th, 13th, or 14th spot. I'm here with Daylan Flowers, who's in the depths of Arkansas, struggling with some connection, but we got him here, and I think we're good to go. Dalen, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. People bear with me as I go through the in depths of what farm life is like within Wi-Fi. Happy to be here though. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, leave a like and comment. Zach will probably comment how bad my Wi-Fi is throughout the entire stream, but just bear with me, folks.
Yeah, no, we got you, Dave. We appreciate you making the time to be here. I'm looking at the committee right now, looking to make a decision. Look, Ole Miss likely threw all their playoff chances out the window. The second they lost to Florida. But
Ooh.
that's that. You know what I mean? You got to go and beat Mississippi State by as much as you can at the end of the day. And even with that, you hope it's enough to push you through into the playoffs, but you need some teams to lose. So, for example, you need probably Vanderbilt to beat Tennessee.
Yeah.
You look further, you probably want Alabama to lose again to Auburn, potentially Georgia to Georgia Tech. There's a lot of things that have to fall in the direction of Ole Miss. But at some point, you got to look in the mirror and say, hey, this is a team that lost to Kentucky and Florida, and quite honestly, a mediocre LSU team. I know it was Death Valley at night. Those are 3 losses that if you told me before the season were going to happen, I don't think I would believe you, Dalen. And here we are, right? If you told me we were to beat Georgia by 3 scores and not make the playoffs, I think you'd tell me I was probably a little crazy. So we're going to see here. They're unleashing them. Texas A&M at 20.
Yeah, so my head is turned, but because I'm looking at the TV, so I'm watching. Colorado 25 was a little interesting, if I'm being honest.
I cannot believe they're still ranked.
Yeah, I think not only just losing to Kansas, but the game score was closer than the actual game was. I think if you didn't watch the Colorado Kansas game, it was a pretty ugly game for Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes. I mean, I'm surprised that they came back at all and got the score a little closer than it was. See A&M at number 20, BYU right in front of them. That's
Dude, Colorado demolished. Iowa State. Tulane, and they're coming to the SIP next year, Day. I'm excited for that one.
Yeah, I mean, Tulane's consistently still been one of those top programs. Winning the Cotton Bowl a couple years ago, and heck, losing their head coach this year, I think a lot of people, myself included, thought we would kind of see a little bit of a drop off. And
Yeah.
I mean, Tulane's still been up there this season and has kept fighting really well. Okay, 16, Arizona State. That's, if I'm being honest, that's actually lower than I thought Arizona State was going to be ranked. I thought that Arizona State has put up a pretty great resume this year, and I love what Kenny's doing down there. Carolina at 15, that's going to be the team to look out for. So as of right now, and I'm delayed, you guys, so I'm sorry, but as of right now, we're going to be ahead of Carolina. So we'll see. I expect us to be right in front of Carolina, if I'm honest.
I'm waiting. Being patient here. I'm glad we're in front of them, dude, honestly.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's like we're kind of going back and forth with Carolina fans. It's kind of like that tie with Missouri last year, and there it is. Drop 5 spots. Ole Miss Rebels are number 14 in the college football playoff rankings for this week, which is expected. I mean, I think that it's fair that we're put right in front of Carolina, a team that we dominated earlier in the season, and our 3 losses, like we talked about, are just looking at those teams are kind of questionable, but combined, you only lose by 6 points to Kentucky and LSU, and you only lose by 1 possession to Florida. I think just the margin of losses for us has kept us in the situation that we're in, and you see Bama right in front of us as well. That's a team that I had question marks of them being in front of us, but that's not my.
I don't want to argue losses here because at the end of the day, it's Ole Miss's fault that we're even in this position.
Mm-hmm.
But Alabama, their losses are I personally believe worse than ours, especially what happened in Norman last week.
Yeah.
That is a bad Oklahoma team. And I know the Vanderbilt loss has looked a little better, but I think they're on a 2 or 3 game losing streak at the same time. But just the fashion in which they lost at Norman, I think it's a little bit different about kind of what happened in Gainesville. I think there's a huge difference. Yeah, Clemson. I mean,
That'll be the game to watch, I think, for a lot of Ole Miss fans. Carolina, number 15, 4th ranked Clemson Tigers. I mean, Clemson kind of rebounded from their early ugly loss against the Georgia Bulldogs in week 1 and has since, obviously another loss later on, but has since reclaimed to what I think a Dabo Swinney team is supposed to look like. So that'll be a fun game this weekend for I think fans in general, but for Ole Miss fans to kind of look out for. I think you made a great point earlier, man, and I talked to Steve Willis about this yesterday too. This is a game on in a state where considering we have 3 losses, we still have some type of chance, which is kind of crazy to say, but you kind of want to go into state and you want to dominate. State has looked really horrible this year, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but they put up some fight against some really good teams in the Texas Longhorns. So this is a game for Ole Miss that you don't want to just kind of have the perspective that, all the players are going to not buy in and they're going to lose interest. And this is a game that, you take care of business and some things happen, we still have a chance to get into the playoffs.
No, there's a chance. And you come in at 14. I think the question for me becomes what happens if South Carolina beats Clemson, right? If the 15th ranked team beats the 12th ranked team, you'd imagine there's going to be a significant jump. But if Ole Miss beats Mississippi State by 30, 40 points, how are you going to put a team that lost to Ole Miss by 24 above them? So it's going to get really tricky here. I never thought I'd say this, but we are rooting for Auburn this week. Here we go. Indiana at the 10 spot, who I don't know, man. It really bothers me when you look at their schedule and look at who they've played because, before the Ohio State game, I think their best win was maybe I think here, a Michigan, maybe.
Yeah, you're right, Michigan. Mm-hmm.
Like that's a terrible schedule day.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to SMU, man. I've watched them a lot this year. And man, their first year in the ACC has really just come in and dominated. So shout out to SMU.
No, they're doing good stuff here. I'm curious to see who they put in front of them. Or where Miami's got to be up here soon, right? Sorry for you.
Yeah, and I hate that. Miami should have 3 losses. Oh, Tennessee at 8.
Yeah, huge one in Nashville.
Yeah,
Diego Pavia. We need a huge win for Andy this week.
This just reminded me of 2017, where the final playoff rankings came out, and they put Alabama team in that didn't go to the conference championship game that year in over an Ohio State team that had been to the conference championship game, and that Bama team would end up winning the national championship, beating Georgia in the Tua Tagovailoa game. But man, this is reminding me of that because I made a point, I think, with you last week that, I really don't know what the committee thinks. Like, I genuinely don't know what goes into the committee's, agenda in terms of who's in front of who, how are they looking to strength of schedule, strength of record. You think you'd have some type of, understanding of what's going on with the committee and, how they're kind of processing where putting teams at. But, I genuinely have no idea what the committee is how they think, how they put things into motion, and what their agenda is in terms of ranking teams. Miami at number 6.
It seems to change a lot, man. And
yeah,
you could talk about they're playing the teams that are playing better right now. There's always that aspect. Like you saw it last year with Florida State. They didn't include them because the quarterback's hurt, which I get that. I think that's a good way to gauge it. But then you got to, assess these head-to-head matchups that happened earlier in the year at the same time.
Yeah.
So it makes for a really tricky situation. And here you go. You got Notre Dame at 5. They're going on the road to USC. That's a massive rivalry game. Don't count out USC. I think that's a game.
Right.
It's a game that could get tricky. A lot of them could this weekend.
Yeah. I mean, I know C has got a really good big win this past weekend.
Yeah.
And I think that they're kind of surging in the right direction. I know you don't bring Lincoln Riley a few years ago to win this type of football. But I think that they've kind of centered themselves and being kind of a consistent team. I pinned it for us.
That's
I don't even
I got like, dude, it's
I don't know.
frustrating. I mean, you look at who these Big Ten teams are playing, and it's just like it's not even comparable to the schedule of these SEC teams that are just out. You look at South Carolina, Alabama, Ole Miss, these teams that are on the brink of getting in, and they're playing legit opponents every single week. I strongly encourage everyone listening to go, look up some of these schedules of Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State. Look them up. I know Texas hasn't had a good schedule either. I'm not defending that by any means, but a majority of the SEC teams have had to play some contenders almost on a weekly basis. So it's hard to watch.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. I mean, I get your point. And I kind of get a little sick feeling in my stomach about it too. But at the same time, you got to just you play who's in front of you, and I mean these teams have taken care of the job at hands for them. I mean, I think like even like looking at Notre Dame is kind of weird. I mean, like
Yeah.
they could lose one more game, and they'd be out. But that's just because not only are they not in a conference, but I mean, I can't even say arguably. I think they have the worst loss by a playoff team this year in losing to NIU earlier in the season, Northern Illinois. But and it's like at the same time, they just beat Army and they beat A&M at the beginning of the season, which now kind of looks like a little of a asterisk as a win as well. But like that's my point. Like I just don't know how to gauge how the committee is looking at these things. I'm okay with the top three. Miami is a weird team. They're 10-1, but Miami should probably have one or two more losses as well.
Right.
And so that I think that's the frustrating part. I look at a lot of the teams in front of Ole Miss at 14, and I'm like, there are teams that are in front of us that are not better than us. And even like Bama right there, I just don't know how they're gauging these things. They take care of Georgia at home. We take care of Georgia at home. I know we lose to LSU and they dominate LSU, but at that same time, they just got their behinds kicked by Oklahoma, and that's a team that in the first half, the memes. I don't know if you've seen the meme. People seen the meme. It's like the first half y'all had us, second half we got you. Like so. Like I just don't know. This is the part of me, not being a coach or not being a player, not being a part of the committee that you can only talk so much about certain things. I don't know, man. It's just you got to take care of business against Mississippi State this weekend and kind of just let leash and have fun with it. But we really kind of just have to take care of business because this is the game that I think I made a tweet during halftime of the Florida game. I was like, this is a game that I wanted to dominate, and I didn't want us to come out in the second half, which is still a close game in the second half. And I think a lot of people at that time were stressed and concerned. I'm like, I'm not just at that particular time because I'm like, I've seen the adjustment that Pete Golding has made coming out of halftime, and the defense cleaned it up really well, especially that run game for Florida in the second half. The offense cannot find it clicking again. But I see this team being really better than what his record is showing. And I think, a lot of journalists are even saying that about Ole Miss. Like, we have 3 losses, but this is a 3-loss team that shouldn't have 3 losses. Look back and watch the 3 losses that we have, and a few minor tweaks, a few different things, and this team is undefeated. And that's the frustrating part about for fans of Ole Miss, that this is the year you're supposed to do it, and you're supposed to beat the Demons, and we're Ole Miss, and here we are again with one regular season game left, and it's like we got to figure it out.
And look, I think one of the worst parts here is looking at this bracket here. Ole Miss, I mean, Georgia is the 8 seed hosting a playoff game against Tennessee right now. And, you take a step back and you understand that, yeah, Ole Miss was actually supposed to be in that spot or maybe the 7th spot right now. They're not, and it's a tough pill to swallow, Dalen. I talked about it earlier. If, you just got on the stream, welcome. Me and Dalen are both streaming from home today. It's probably why it looks a little strange. But, these losses of Ole Miss are just awful. And Kentucky, that's a game that, it's going to sit with this program forever. Florida was a really difficult one. I expected the team to show up to Gainesville similar to how they did in Fayetteville, and that wasn't the case. You got to give credit to Florida and DJ Lagway, who they played an incredible game. But this is an Ole Miss team with probably the most talent that Ole Miss has ever seen in the program. And you're going to end up with a worse record than last year, having that third loss on Saturday. And now it costs you hosting a playoff game, which looks like it would have happened at this point. So it's very disappointing. But, you're spot on, Dylan. There's a lot of weird matchups this weekend that, if you guys don't know, Notre Dame plays USC. That's always weird. Tennessee and Vandy's had some upsets. Georgia plays Georgia Tech. Very strange game.
Georgia Tech looks really good, by the way, people. I know their record may not show, but they've had a pretty decent season, coming off a pretty well finish to last year as well. I think Haynes King and company can do some damage against the Bulldogs. A Georgia team, might I add, that struggled against UMass this past weekend. Just Georgia team is beatable. So I don't know how that may help in terms of how the committee may look at us in terms of, okay, you beat Georgia, but Georgia is kind of in a weird position too. But you also want teams in front of you to lose. So, I mean, Haynes Kings and company could do some damage against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, and then we talked about it a little bit earlier, but Clemson versus South Carolina is going to be massive. The question that Dalen and I were really trying to answer was, where do you put South Carolina if they go in there and smoke Clemson? Do you rank them ahead of Ole Miss if Ole Miss, does a good job against Mississippi State? That becomes a question, and obviously I say no when you take into account the head-to-head, and Ole Miss went to South Carolina and absolutely beat the brakes off of them. But who knows what the committee's thinking? So really just a strange situation unfolding. But I mean, I'm sitting here looking at some of these matchups. Indiana at Penn State, SMU at Notre Dame. Like these aren't games that the committee wants. The committee wants Ole Miss.
That's it. And let me tell you something, man. That's exactly why you see Carolina, Ole Miss, Bama right there on top of each other. Because I hate to say this, but this is also me growing up in the South, loving SEC football my entire life. The SEC bias is a real thing. People. This is I watch like videos on YouTube all the time of people coming to the SEC for the first time, and they're like, "This is what college football is." And it's a real thing. Like it's, you talk about, you'll see stuff like this in the South, God, family, and football. Like it's really like that for people in the South. Like people that are devoted to the Southeastern Conference, like it is literally a lifestyle here. And not only that, the football and the history is repertoire to what that is as well. And they bring up the Florida Ole Miss game. I want to ask you something that you can kind of chat on. I think the Florida game is weird. A lot of reasons, but I want to bring this to you on both sides of the ball. The defense, Chris Paul gets hurt early, Ian Bates gets hurt, Jaden Kennedy deals with an injury, and I think Walter Nolan was beat up as well throughout a lot of different possessions. First, on that defensive side, do you think that kind of had made the defense kind of evaluate differently, which allowed the Florida run game to kind of be as explosive as it was in the first half against an Ole Miss rush defense that we have not seen giving up much to any team in the country? But as well on the offensive side of the ball, man, again, the running back situation is weird, but Micah Pettis goes down for a couple plays. Reese McIntyre goes out, and then Trey Harris comes back, gets injured again. Do you think we got our offense created in a fathomable way without Trey? He comes back, we kind of divert a little bit of our game plan towards him, then he gets out, and then we're like, what do we do? Do you think that was some of the play? Because as well, I've heard Jordan Watkins was dealing with an injury as well. So I truly want to kind of just pick your mind. How much do you think injuries kind of, and this isn't me giving an excuse, by the way, people, for us losing. It's just, I kind of want to ask that, what do you think the injuries may have played in terms of the game plan that we had going into Florida?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you can look at it with two sides of the coin, right? Because when Trey Harris went out, the offense, in my opinion, didn't, that was the best they looked all year.
Mhm.
Daquan Wright, Caden Prescore, all these guys were getting involved. And the offense really adapted, hey, maybe we shouldn't throw the ball to Trey Harris every single play. And they did that. But then, you can assess these games against Kentucky in that fourth quarter and LSU and Prince Iman who's your best pass rusher, and he's out.
Yeah.
And it's evident. And I think in Florida, you got a combination of that. Your starting safety goes out. Prayers up to Banks. That was a horrible injury. And then obviously Trey Harris gets hurt. And Watkins, who essentially filled in for Harris in that outside receiver role, he gets injured. So now it didn't look like Jackson Dart knew who to throw the ball to. Daquan Wright, who's another heavily targeted receiver, got banged up early in that game. Walter Nolan looked strange with the hand. You talked about it.
Yeah.
I think the question for me lies underneath something that Lane had talked about going into the year, and that was we are going to take a softer practice approach in the spring. That way, our guys are more preserved towards the end of the year. Which, here's the thing. On that Monday before Florida, Lane admitted to us it was the most healthy that the team had looked.
Yep.
So, maybe it does pay off for Ole Miss in some ways, but then it feels like every single game someone was getting banged up.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like a further extent than last year when they didn't take this approach. So I'm really curious, Daylan, do you think it was effective? And would you do it if you were on the coaching staff next year?
That's a great question, man. I think I completely understand why it happened. And I think the great thing is that we got better at this year was just having depth in general, and I think that's just something that we lacked in last year. And in general, under Lane Kiffin and being at Ole Miss, that we've lacked depth. And we have that now. But you can take all the precautions you want for things such as injuries, but you don't know what's going to happen until you get on that field and things happen. You don't expect Trey to miss a whole month, come back, and then go out again, and he probably won't return for the season. You don't expect Jordan Watkins to have an injury at the start of the season, get healthy, look really good, and then deal with more injuries as the season goes on. You don't know. You can't really just plan for that. As much precaution you can take for it. And I thought they did a good job of that. I think one thing that was kind of brought up a lot after the Kentucky loss, which is more important for me instead of the fall and the spring, is our 4 non-conference games. I look at them and I just don't think that they prepared us for our full 4-quarter game of football. And I think that if we at least had 1, maybe 2 competitive games in our non-conference schedule, then the Kentucky loss wouldn't even be a thing. I think we would have had preparation to how to handle criticism and struggles in the fourth quarter. I think Dart would have had played under pressure a little bit more at that time instead of sitting out most of the fourth quarter, and then if not the entire fourth quarter, playing half of the fourth quarter, most of those non-conference games. I just don't think we were prepared because of those 4 non-conference games. And you can look at, say, some people will say Wake Forest is an ACC team, but Wake Forest is the smallest ACC team. They don't put up any competition to any true team in the country. That team wasn't prepared, and I truly believe we got punched in the gut against Kentucky. And as much as it sucked, and as much as that one loss may change, if even we have 2 losses right now, I just don't think we were prepared because of it. And I think that I'm more proud than now moving forward, Tulane and Washington State next year. Yeah. That's 2 great games that we're going to be able to play, get a little bit more experience, see how the team will work from a start to end game. Because look, I will say this until the day I die. Football is a 4-quarter game, and when you're playing against teams that have either the same or more better talent than you and the same or better coaching staffs than you, you're going to have to play a 4-quarter game to win, and you're going to have to create minimal mistakes, and you're going to have to take the points that are given to you, and those are things that we just not have done this year. And I just the 4 non-conference games at the start of the season really didn't prepare us to how operate in moments where we have a 2-minute drill and we need 6 or 3 points. I just don't think the team was operated ready for that. And then when it happened, it was like it's already conference play, and what much can we do now that we're in the midst of a conference play now?
100%, Dalen. And, transitioning to Miss Evie here in the chat, asking some good questions. If you guys have questions, please leave them down below. Talking about that non-conference, I think it affects the rank of Ole Miss because, if you look at who's the first team that Georgia plays, Clemson. You can look at Texas A&M. I mean, they're throwing Notre Dame on the schedule, right? So it definitely plays into consideration. And next year, it's definitely going to be a factor when Ole Miss takes on Tulane and Washington State. Commendable opponents. So it's an opportunity for Ole Miss to, really start their season off on a high note there. Here we got the question. What does Ole Miss have to do to make the college football playoffs, Dylan? Look, a lot of things have to happen. And it starts, on Friday. Ole Miss probably needs to win by 30 or more points. It sounds crazy, but this is a Mississippi State team that has 2 wins on the year, folks. I believe they have wins over Eastern Kentucky and UMass. They do not have a single Power 5 win. And it's not like they're playing these games close. They're getting blown out week after week after week. And it's embarrassing. So if Ole Miss doesn't win by 30 plus, then, I'm not even sure they should be competing for a spot in the playoffs. But look, that's not the case. And hopefully they do win by a large margin. But looking, at the other games that aren't Ole Miss, Alabama, Auburn, we all know if Bama's ranked above Ole Miss, we need them to lose. I do think you want South Carolina to beat Clemson, but they need to do it in a game where it's kind of a last-second field goal, in my opinion, Day. You do not want to blow out in that game, and you certainly don't want Clemson to win. That's another team who's in front of you fighting for a playoff spot. You probably want Notre Dame to lose to USC, right? Another team that's in front of you.
Because I think they will get knocked out completely if they end up losing to USC, regardless if it's a 10-point win by USC or a 3-point win by USC.
Yeah, Notre Dame, we said it earlier, but they have the worst loss probably of any team, even in this discussion in Northern Illinois. Just a really uncompetitive non-Power 5 school. So, another loss to USC, and I truly believe that they're done. We're huge Vanderbilt fans this week, too. Shout out Diego Pavia. He's referred to this game as life or death, even though Vanderbilt is well out of any sort of competitive picture here. So you can tell, they're going to be ready. That game is in Nashville, not in Knoxville, which is good news for Ole Miss fans and those who are cheering for Vanderbilt. And then this A&M versus Texas game is really interesting. You probably don't want, A&M. If they win, my question is how many spots are they able to jump? And if Texas loses, where do you put them? I believe the winner of that game goes to the SEC championship. So you probably want A&M to lose and just have Texas hold their spot, which they are the 2 seed right now. The winner of that game will play Georgia in Atlanta. There are 3 ACC teams in the top 12, an abundance of Big Ten teams who have played absolutely nobodies. It's definitely frustrating. And Ole Miss had the chance to solidify themselves in Gainesville. And it didn't happen, so now you're relying on a lot of these other games to, play out and hopefully in your favor, Dylan.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the weird part of sports, when you have expectations preseason for any team, and things don't really go out how you want them to, and then when the latter part of the season comes and things haven't gone the way you want them to, you kind of have to rely on other people to do their jobs. So, I can't, at the end of the day, I can't be mad if we go out there and take care of Mississippi State, but we still don't get in the playoff. I don't know if I can be mad. I can be mad and frustrated with the way this season has went for our own team, but I can't be mad that other teams didn't win because that shouldn't have been their job in the first place when we've had ample opportunities to take care of business and not have 3 losses this year. But, it's going to be fun regardless. I think Ole Miss fans on here, I say to them, you probably think Saturday doesn't matter. And I would say it really does. So, enjoy Thanksgiving Thursday, enjoy the Egg Bowl Friday, and then have your TVs on Saturday because there are a lot of big games that can make or break whether this Ole Miss team has a couple of more games to play in December or not. And look, regardless of how that happens, and if we do get in, I said this to Stephen Willis yesterday. Man, look, you go back a few years ago to the Ole Miss baseball team. You can kind of agree to disagree whether or not that they deserve to have any postseason opportunities. Well, they were given postseason opportunities. The Rebs got hot and they ended up being national champions. So if that opportunity is given to the football team, I would just say watch out. I think that as much criticism as Jackson Dart has received since the game, one thing I will not take away from who he is his character and his heart for succeeding and making sure that he does his best to his abilities to putting this program at the best possible position. I think that we're going to see a JD that is really poised and motivated if given another chance to get into that playoff opportunity. So regardless, I'll be okay if we don't get in. And even if we do, you kind of talked about it earlier, expect us not to be able to host a playoff game, which kind of sucks. But I'd rather take nothing. I'd rather take something rather than nothing. So we just got to take care of business against State and see how things fall out, man. It's going to be a weird one.
Yeah, here another comment from Evie. Yeah, if A&M gets in, according to the college football playoffs, ESPN analytics, they are in if A&M gets to that championship game. So, yeah, let's hook them this week. It's Evie's college. So, we're not huge A&M guys. Evie actually transitioned from A&M to Ole Miss. So that tells you all you need to know. Go Texas this week. Daylan, I don't have much, man. I will be in attendance for the Egg Bowl. I believe you will be too. Should be a lot of fun. And, it's really – I truly believe there is still something to play for. Ole Miss is ranked the 14th team in the country. And there's no doubt that weird things have happened all year long. So, there's no reason to not believe that we can't have some weird things happen again for Ole Miss heading into this weekend. That's all I got, Daylan. Should be a fun one on Friday. I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, like and subscribe. Anything else you got, man?
Man, if Texas were to pull out a win against A&M on the road this weekend and, Georgia takes care of business against Georgia Tech, you'll see a rematch between those two teams in the SEC championship game on a neutral side. Obviously, the championship game is in Georgia, so it'll probably fare Georgia a little bit better. But I think that'll also give and take what goes into the final rankings because that could be a rematch game, and whoever comes out on top of that and how that game kind of deciphers will probably be a huge key in terms of if we have a chance as well. So people think about that as well. I don't know who we would root for in terms of that if that were to happen, but we can look at that in a later stance. So that's going to be interesting for me. I think that the rematch of possibility of Texas and Georgia in the SEC championship game can be looked really good or really bad. So we'll see, man. And Lady Rebels take on UConn in the Baja Mahar championship game tomorrow at 6 o'clock, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So make sure you guys tune in and check that out. I think the loss to USC for the Lady Rebels earlier in the season kind of prepared them for this game. So hopefully they can take out a dub for it.
Yeah, it should be a good one. Well, as always, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Be sure to stay tuned to therebelwalk.com for all your Ole Miss sports needs. Like and subscribe, and let's go out with a high note this weekend, Ole Miss fans.
Howdy, y'all.
See you guys.